One of the most insidious moves a narcissist makes when they perceive someone as too strong is to attempt to undermine that person's emotional or mental stability. This is often done through gaslighting, a form of psychological manipulation that causes the victim to question their own reality, memories, or perceptions. Gaslighting can be incredibly damaging because it erodes the victim's confidence in their own mind, leaving them uncertain and vulnerable to further manipulation. The narcissist uses gaslighting not only as a tool to maintain control, but as a way to destabilize the victim's sense of self. When a narcissist feels that their grip on power is weakening due to a strong and independent individual, they may resort to gaslighting as a way to reassert dominance and regain control over the situation. The narcissist's gaslighting typically begins with small, seemingly harmless actions. They might deny things that have happened, insist that the victim misinterpreted events, or claim that something they said or did never occurred. Over time, these distortions of reality accumulate and create a growing sense of confusion in the victim's mind. The narcissist might dismiss the victim's feelings or perceptions by saying things like, "You're being too sensitive," or "You're imagining things," effectively invalidating the victim's emotions and making them doubt their own experiences. The goal here is to make the victim feel as though their thoughts and emotions are unreliable, leaving them dependent on the narcissist for their sense of reality. One of the most dangerous aspects of gaslighting is that it often feels like a gradual process. The victim doesn't realize right away what is happening. The narcissist's behavior is subtle, and the victim is left trying to make sense of contradictory messages and mixed signals. For example, the narcissist might initially deny a past event, then later subtly act as though the event never happened, or even accuse the victim of being forgetful or irrational for bringing it up. These small, almost imperceptible shifts in reality chip away at the victim's confidence, causing them to second-guess their memory, thoughts, and judgments. The more the narcissist denies reality and invalidates the victim's experiences, the more the victim begins to doubt themselves and question whether they can trust their own mind. This manipulation is especially effective when used against a person who is already self-assured and strong. When a narcissist feels that their influence is being threatened by someone who has a strong sense of self and is difficult to control, they will use gaslighting to create confusion, targeting the very foundation of the victim's self-esteem. The narcissist knows that strong individuals are often more self-reliant and therefore less reliant on external validation. Gaslighting serves to erode that self-reliance, making the victim question their own judgment and become more susceptible to the narcissist's influence. The narcissist's ultimate goal is to regain control by destabilizing the victim's sense of reality and causing them to become emotionally dependent. Gaslighting accomplishes this by systematically dismantling the victim's confidence in their perceptions and emotions, forcing them into a position where they start to rely on the narcissist for reassurance and validation. Over time, the victim becomes less certain of their own thoughts and feelings and more dependent on the narcissist to provide a sense of clarity and truth. This manipulation is designed to make the victim feel weak, confused, and unsure of themselves, which in turn makes them easier to control. As the gaslighting continues, the victim often begins to isolate themselves, unsure of whom to trust or who to believe. They may become reluctant to speak up or share their thoughts as the fear of being dismissed or ridiculed by the narcissist becomes more prevalent. The narcissist, aware of this, may reinforce their control by suggesting that the victim is simply too emotional or overreacting, further reinforcing the idea that the victim's emotions and perceptions are flawed. The more the victim doubts themselves, the more the narcissist's control strengthens, creating a cycle that is difficult to break. Gaslighting can also have long-term psychological effects. The constant invalidation of the victim's experiences leads to a significant decline in self-esteem. The victim may feel as though they are losing their grip on reality, leading to anxiety, depression, or a sense of helplessness. They might become hypervigilant, constantly second-guessing their thoughts and emotions, and start to doubt their own worth. This kind of psychological manipulation can create a toxic environment in which the victim feels powerless and unworthy of trust, all while the narcissist maintains the illusion of being the only source of truth and stability. The narcissist's ability to gaslight is particularly effective because it plays on the victim's desire for connection and acceptance by distorting the truth and making the victim feel as though they are crazy or irrational. The narcissist manipulates the victim's sense of self to keep them dependent on the narcissist version of events. This technique is not only about creating confusion, but about ensuring that the victim remains emotionally entangled with the narcissist. The narcissist gaslighting is a way of maintaining dominance in a relationship, turning the table so that the victim is left questioning their own worth and, by extension, their emotional reality. In the long run, the damage done by gaslighting can be profound. The victim may find it increasingly difficult to trust their own thoughts or intuition, and their sense of self may be eroded to the point where they feel entirely dependent on the narcissist for validation and reassurance. This dependency is exactly what the narcissist wants: a weakened, insecure person who can be easily controlled and manipulated. Through gaslighting, the narcissist not only maintains control over the relationship, but ensures that the victim remains trapped in a psychological web of doubt and confusion, making it harder for them to break free and regain their sense of self. One of the more sinister tactics the narcissist employs when they feel threatened by someone's strength is to create a scenario where they project their own faults and insecurities onto the victim, accusing them of the very things they are guilty of themselves. This process is known as projection, and it is a powerful manipulation strategy that allows the narcissist to deflect any responsibility or accountability for their actions while simultaneously making the victim feel guilty, flawed, or even crazy. Projection is especially dangerous when used against someone who is self-assured and confident, because it causes the victim to question their own reality and behavior, ultimately breaking down their sense of self. The narcissist's goal is always the same: to remain in control by creating confusion and emotional distress in the victim. The narcissist's ability to project their negative traits onto others comes from their deep-rooted insecurity and fear of being exposed. Narcissists often have a fragile self-esteem and struggle with feelings of shame or inadequacy, even though they may outwardly appear confident or superior. Rather than acknowledging or addressing these inner feelings, they project them onto others. For example, if the narcissist is manipulative, they may accuse the victim of being deceitful. If the narcissist is emotionally unavailable or distant, they may blame the victim for being cold or unloving. By projecting their own flaws, the narcissist shifts the blame and responsibility away from themselves, making the victim feel as though they are the ones with the problem. The most dangerous aspect of projection is that it creates a warped version of reality, where the victim starts to question their own thoughts, behaviors, and emotions. The narcissist's constant accusations and attacks can leave the victim feeling confused, paranoid, and self-doubting. The narcissist knows that this confusion is a powerful tool for maintaining control. By making the victim believe they are guilty of the very things they are being accused of, the narcissist is able to manipulate them into a position of submission, where they will go to great lengths to prove their innocence, apologize for things they didn't do, or try to change their behavior to please the narcissist. In the case of a narcissist who feels threatened by a strong individual, projection becomes even more pronounced. When the victim's confidence or independence challenges the narcissist's need for control, the narcissist might begin projecting all their own vulnerabilities and flaws onto the victim in an attempt to undermine their strength. For example, if the narcissist feels that their power is slipping, they may accuse the victim of trying to control everything, even though it is the narcissist who has been the one pulling the strings all along. If the narcissist feels insecure about their own competence, they may accuse the victim of being unskilled or unqualified, even though it is the narcissist who is projecting their own sense of inadequacy onto the victim. In doing so, the narcissist diverts attention away from their own shortcomings and instead places the focus on the victim, making them feel as though they are the one causing problem. This manipulation strategy often extends to the victim's relationships with others. The narcissist may attempt to turn people against the victim by painting them in a negative light. If the victim is seen as strong, independent, or assertive, the narcissist may accuse them of being controlling, selfish, or arrogant, hoping to shift public opinion and isolate the victim. This can be particularly damaging in professional settings, where the narcissist may try to discredit the victim's abilities or reputation by making false claims about their behavior or work ethic. The goal is to erode the victim's credibility and support network so that the narcissist remains in a position of power and influence. The emotional toll of projection can be overwhelming. The victim is often left feeling like they are losing touch with their own identity, Over time, the constant barrage of accusations can lead to a profound sense of self-doubt as the victim internalizes the narcissist's false narratives. The victim may start to feel as though they are incapable of being trusted, or that their instincts and perceptions are flawed. This is exactly what the narcissist wants, to weaken the victim's confidence, making them more malleable and easier to control. As the victim begins to question their own reality, the narcissist can continue to manipulate them without resistance, ensuring that they remain in control of the relationship dynamic. This projection is often subtle, making it difficult for the victim to recognize what is happening. At first, the victim may dismiss the accusations as misunderstandings or overreactions, but as time goes on, the repeated accusations chip away at their sense of self. The narcissist may use the projection tactic in a way that seems almost rational, making it harder for the victim to defend themselves or recognize the manipulation. The narcissist's ability to disguise their intentions with false accusations and distorted narratives makes it particularly challenging for the victim to assert their truth, creating a feeling of powerlessness that is difficult to overcome. Projection is particularly effective in relationships where the victim is strong, independent, and capable because it targets the victim's core sense of identity. The narcissist knows that these individuals are not easily controlled through traditional means, so they use projection to create doubt, guilt, and confusion. The victim's strength and confidence threaten the narcissist's need for control, and projection is a way for the narcissist to regain power by making the victim question themselves and their place in the relationship. Over time, the victim may begin to internalize the narcissist's accusations, believing that they are the ones with the problem. They may start to feel anxious, defensive, or even ashamed of themselves as the narcissist's projection slowly distorts their sense of self. This can lead to a cycle of self-blame and self-doubt, making it difficult for the victim to break free from the narcissist's influence. The narcissist, meanwhile, continues to manipulate the situation, projecting their own flaws and insecurities onto the victim, all while maintaining the upper hand in the relationship. One of the most potent and emotionally devastating tools that a narcissist uses when they feel threatened by someone's strength is to engage in a form of emotional withdrawal or silent treatment. This tactic is not only designed to punish the target, but also to manipulate and control their emotional state by causing confusion, anxiety, and a deep sense of rejection. Emotional withdrawal, in essence, involves the narcissist abruptly distancing themselves or cutting off communication, leaving the target feeling abandoned, ignored, and uncertain. This behavior is especially effective when the victim is strong and self-sufficient, because the narcissist knows that in order to maintain control, they must destabilize the person's emotional world. The narcissist's withdrawal is often unpredictable and confusing. One moment they may be charming, affectionate, and supportive, while the next they suddenly become distant, cold, and unresponsive. This unpredictable behavior creates a sense of emotional whiplash, causing the target to question what went wrong and what they might have done to provoke such a reaction. The emotional confusion that results from this kind of behavior makes the victim question their own worth, leading them to think that they must have done something wrong, even when they haven't. The narcissist knows that the best way to manipulate someone is to make them feel emotionally dependent, so when they withdraw, the target is left in a state of uncertainty, unsure of how to regain the narcissist's favor or affection. The emotional withdrawal often comes after the narcissist perceives the victim as a threat. When the target becomes too strong, confident, or independent, the narcissist feels their control slipping, and their instinct is to reassert dominance. The silent treatment is a way to regain that control, as it forces the target into a position where they are constantly trying to win back the narcissist's attention and approval. The target is left to ruminate on what they might have done wrong, spending time and energy trying to decipher the narcissist's behavior. This constant self-reflection can erode the target's sense of self-worth, making them feel inadequate and insecure. The narcissist, however, thrives in this chaos, as it reinforces their sense of superiority. The effect of emotional withdrawal on the victim is often profound. The victim may start to feel invisible, as if they no longer matter to the narcissist. They may become consumed by the need to regain the narcissist's attention, feeling as though their happiness and sense of security are entirely dependent on the narcissist's approval. The target may begin to doubt their own perceptions of the situation, wondering if they are imagining things or if they truly deserve the narcissist's affection. This self-doubt is precisely what the narcissist is trying to cultivate, as it weakens the victim's emotional resilience and increases their dependence on the narcissist for validation. One of the most dangerous aspects of emotional withdrawal is the way it manipulates the victim's emotions. Narcissists understand that human beings have a deep need for connection and approval, and they use this to their advantage. When the narcissist withdraws emotionally, they create a vacuum that the victim will instinctively try to fill, often through excessive apologizing, overcompensating, or trying to prove their worth. The victim may become obsessed with trying to restore the connection, doing whatever it takes to gain the narcissist's approval. This dynamic creates a power imbalance where the victim becomes increasingly dependent on the narcissist's emotional responses, constantly seeking reassurance and validation. Another aspect of emotional withdrawal is the way it fosters feelings of guilt in the victim. The narcissist is skilled at making the target feel responsible for the breakdown in communication or the distancing behavior. They may give the victim the impression that they are the ones who have caused the problem, even though the narcissist's actions are the true cause. The narcissist might say things like, "You must have done something to upset me," or, "If you cared about me, you would know what you did wrong." This guilt tripping creates a situation where the victim feels obligated to fix the problem, even if they don't know what the problem is, leaving them in a state of emotional limbo. The narcissist, meanwhile, can continue to manipulate the situation, controlling the victim's actions and emotions without having to do any work themselves. In some cases, the narcissist's emotional withdrawal may escalate into a prolonged period of silence or total disengagement. The victim may be left wondering whether the narcissist is done with them entirely or whether they are just waiting for the victim to make the first move. The uncertainty of not knowing what is going on creates an intense emotional pressure that the victim can hardly endure. They may try to reach out, apologize, or ask what is wrong, but the narcissist's silence continues, deepening the sense of emotional deprivation. This period of silence may last for days, weeks, or even longer, leaving the victim to feel abandoned and rejected. The narcissist's ability to withdraw emotionally and leave the victim in a state of uncertainty is an effective way to regain control. When the narcissist is able to make the victim feel emotionally distressed, they reassert dominance and ensure that the victim remains in a weakened state. The silent treatment may be used intermittently as a tool to manipulate the victim into compliance or to remind them of their place in the narcissist's hierarchy. It is an emotionally damaging tactic that plays on the victim's fears of abandonment and rejection, ultimately serving to reinforce the narcissist's power. Over time, the victim may begin to internalize the narcissist's withdrawal as a reflection of their own inadequacy. The victim might think that they are unworthy of the narcissist's attention or love, leading them to engage in self-blame. This ongoing cycle of emotional withdrawal and guilt manipulation keeps the victim in a constant state of emotional turmoil, making it difficult for them to regain their sense of self or autonomy. The narcissist, however, remains in control, using this tactic to keep the victim emotionally destabilized and dependent. The silent war that a narcissist wages against a person they perceive as too strong often takes the form of subtle attacks on the victim's reputation. These attacks are carefully crafted to remain under the radar, often leaving the victim confused, isolated, and unsure of what is happening. Narcissists are experts in operating covertly, using their charm and manipulation to turn situations in their favor without making overt moves that could expose their true intentions. This type of psychological warfare is effective because it can often go unnoticed by others until the damage has already been done, and by the time the victim realizes what is happening, they are already at a disadvantage. One of the most common tactics used in these silent attacks is spreading rumors. Narcissists have an uncanny ability to turn even the smallest piece of information into a weapon. They take something innocuous or distorted and twist it into a narrative that damages the victim's image. They may tell lies about the victim's behavior or character, spreading these rumors to others in their social or professional circle. The rumors often have just enough truth to make them believable, but they are exaggerated or altered to paint the victim in an unfavorable light. This approach is particularly dangerous because it causes others to doubt the victim's integrity without them ever having had a chance to defend themselves. A narcissist will often use use this strategy in environments where they know they have influence or control over the perception of others. In the workplace, for example, the narcissist might subtly undermine a colleague by telling others that the colleague is difficult to work with, unreliable, or unprofessional. In social settings, the narcissist might suggest that a person is self-centered or uncaring, even if the opposite is true. These insinuations are designed to erode the victim's relationships with others and tarnish their reputation in a way that leaves them isolated and vulnerable. The narcissist's power lies in their ability to control the narrative without ever having to take responsibility for the damage they've caused. Another common tactic is to discredit the victim by questioning their credibility. Narcissists are skilled at manipulating situations to make others doubt the victim's competence or reliability. They may subtly suggest that the victim is not capable of handling responsibilities or that they are too emotional or irrational to be trusted. This could take the form of a remark made in passing or an offhand comment about the victim's past mistakes or perceived weaknesses. While these comments may seem trivial or insignificant to others, they begin to accumulate over time, causing others to view the victim with suspicion and mistrust. The narcissist's primary goal in this silent war is to control the perception of others, making sure that they, not the victim, are seen as the dominant figure in the relationship or environment. If they feel their control is slipping because the victim is too strong, the narcissist will do everything in their power to shift the balance back in their favor. They may try to isolate the victim by turning people against them, using social pressure and manipulation to weaken the victim's position. This often involves undermining the victim's friendships, family connections, or professional alliances. The narcissist may twist information or create scenarios that make the victim seem untrustworthy, causing others to distance themselves from the victim or question their motives. The silent attacks on the victim's reputation are often made worse by the narcissist's ability to play the victim themselves. In many cases, narcissists have a remarkable ability to turn the tables, portraying themselves as the one who has been wronged by the victim. They might claim that the victim is attacking them, making false accusations, or trying to damage their reputation. This makes it extremely difficult for the victim to defend themselves because they are painted as the aggressor, while the narcissist continues to play the role of the innocent party. This shift in narrative is key to the narcissist's manipulation because it forces the victim into a defensive position where they have to fight against false allegations instead of confronting the true source of the issue. This type of psychological warfare can be particularly damaging because it undermines the victim's sense of trust in themselves and others. When a narcissist is able to successfully manipulate the opinions of others, the victim starts to question their own reality. They begin to wonder if the rumors and negative perceptions are accurate or if they are simply overreacting. The emotional toll of dealing with these silent attacks can be immense, as the victim is constantly on edge, not knowing who to trust or where the next attack will come from. The narcissist's actions create a climate of fear and doubt, leaving the victim feeling isolated and alone. In some cases, these silent attacks can lead to long-term damage to the victim's reputation, both personally and professionally. The victim may find that people have begun to treat them differently, perhaps giving them less respect, avoiding them, or questioning their competence. This can have serious consequences, especially in the workplace, where reputation and relationships are often crucial to success. The narcissist, however, remains in control. Having carefully orchestrated the entire situation to their benefit, they thrive in the chaos they create, watching as the victim struggles to understand what has happened and how to regain their standing. The narcissist's ability to wage this silent war is what makes them such a dangerous opponent. They are not always overt in their actions, preferring instead to operate behind the scenes, where their true intentions are hidden. The attacks on the victim's reputation are subtle, but they are no less damaging. By the time the victim realizes what is happening, the narcissist has already manipulated the situation to their advantage. The narcissist's ultimate goal is to maintain control and power, and they do this by eroding the victim's sense of self, undermining their relationships, and isolating them from support. Through these silent attacks, the narcissist ensures that they remain the focal point of attention and authority, leaving the victim fighting an invisible battle that can take a long time to recognize and even longer to heal from. Projection is a psychological defense mechanism that narcissists often use to deflect attention from their own flaws and project those flaws onto others. When a narcissist feels threatened by someone, particularly someone who is strong, confident, or self-aware, they instinctively use projection to shift the focus away from their insecurities and onto the target. Projection is an insidious tactic because it not only diverts attention from the narcissist's own shortcomings, but it also creates confusion and self-doubt in the victim. The narcissist essentially accuses others of the very things they are guilty of themselves, making the victim question their own behavior, intentions, and reality. The narcissist's need for control and superiority compels them to maintain an image of perfection, or at the very least, the appearance of being right or superior. When they encounter someone who threatens this carefully curated image, they feel compelled to project their flaws onto that person to protect themselves from criticism. For example, if the narcissist is manipulative or deceitful, they might accuse the target of being dishonest or untrustworthy. If the narcissist is controlling or dismissive of others' emotions, they might accuse the target of being overly controlling or insensitive. By projecting these negative traits onto the target, the narcissist is not only deflecting attention from their own behavior, but also creating a false narrative in which the victim is seen as the aggressor or the one with the issue. This tactic works because it creates a level of confusion and doubt in the mind of the target. The victim is forced to question their own actions and motivations in light of the narcissist's accusations. The narcissist's constant stream of false projections wears down the target's sense of reality, making them unsure of their own behavior and perceptions. As the target begins to internalize these projections, they may start to believe that they are the problem, that they are the ones with the flaws or shortcomings. This in turn makes them more vulnerable to the narcissist's manipulations, as they may start to seek the narcissist's approval or validation to ease their own growing self-doubt. One of the key reasons projection is so effective is that it taps into the victim's desire to be seen as a good person. Most people want to believe that they are kind, considerate, and honest, and they may be deeply sensitive to accusations that suggest otherwise. The narcissist, knowing this, will exploit these sensitivities by accusing the target of the very things they fear being seen as. For example, a narcissist who is emotionally neglectful might accuse the target of being emotionally unavailable or selfish. The victim, wanting to be a compassionate person, may then overcompensate by questioning their own actions, over-apologizing, or trying to prove their worth in ways that the narcissist will never recognize. As the victim continues to absorb these projections, they may begin to lose sight of their own identity and become increasingly dependent on the narcissist for validation. The narcissist's constant shifting of blame allows them to avoid taking responsibility for their own behavior, which in turn reinforces their sense of superiority. This creates a dynamic where the victim becomes less certain of themselves and more reliant on the narcissist's perspective. The narcissist knows that as long as they can keep the focus on the target's alleged faults, they will remain in control of the situation. In relationships with narcissists, this projection often leads to a cycle of confusion and self-doubt. The victim may initially feel frustrated or upset by the narcissist's behavior, but is then made to feel as though they're the one in the wrong. The narcissist accusations may be so frequent and intense that the victim eventually begins to believe them. This creates a sense of powerlessness, as the victim feels trapped in a cycle of constant self-questioning, never fully trusting their own thoughts or feelings. The narcissist, meanwhile, continues to manipulate the situation to their advantage, reinforcing their dominance and control over the victim. Projection also serves to keep the narcissist in a state of perpetual victimhood. By constantly accusing others of their own failings, the narcissist can avoid taking responsibility for their actions and preserve their fragile self-impediment. This projection creates a distorted version of reality in which the narcissist is always in the right and everyone else is either wrong or inferior. The narcissist uses this distorted reality to justify their mistreatment of others, claiming that they are simply reacting to the flaws or mistakes of those around them. This makes it easier for them to avoid any self-reflection or personal growth, as they are always focused on the alleged shortcomings of others rather than their own. The danger of projection is that it doesn't just affect the narcissist and their victim. It can also have a ripple effect on the people around them. By casting others in a negative light, the narcissist can influence how they are perceived by others, often turning friends, family, or colleagues against the victim. In a workplace setting, for instance, The narcissist might project their own faults onto a coworker, spreading rumors or making false accusations to undermine that person's reputation. This can lead to a situation where the victim is isolated, misunderstood, and unfairly judged by those around them. In more extreme cases, projection can escalate into a full-scale smear campaign, where the narcissist systematically ruins the victim's relationships or reputation. The narcissist may plant seeds of doubt in others' minds, suggesting that the victim is manipulative, dishonest, or unstable. This not only serves to protect the narcissist from scrutiny, but also keeps the victim on the defensive, constantly fighting against false accusations and the resulting damage to their social or professional standing. The narcissist's use of projection ultimately serves to reinforce their own fragile sense of superiority while simultaneously breaking down the confidence and sense of self of those around them. By projecting their own flaws, weaknesses, and insecurities onto others, the narcissist can maintain control over the situation, manipulate the victim's emotions, and ensure that they remain the focal point of attention and power. In the process, the victim is left questioning their own reality and struggling to assert their own truth, while the narcissist continues to thrive in their illusion of perfection. Manipulation tactics such as gaslighting and isolation are some of the most effective strategies a narcissist employs when they feel threatened by someone else's strength. These tactics are deeply psychological and work to erode the victim's sense of reality, control, and self-esteem. Gaslighting in particular is one of the narcissist's most insidious tools. It is a form of psychological manipulation where the narcissist systematically undermines the victim's perception of reality, making them question their memories, feelings, and even their sanity. When the narcissist feels threatened by someone who is strong, independent, or confident, gaslighting becomes a weapon of choice to keep the target disoriented and vulnerable. Gaslighting works by creating a web of lies and distortions that confuses the target and destabilizes their understanding of what is true. It often starts with small, seemingly inconsequential lies, but these lies grow in complexity and frequency over time. The narcissist might deny saying something they said earlier, insist that an event didn't happen the way the victim remembers, or claim that the victim is overreacting to a situation. These small, persistent manipulations slowly chip away at the victim's confidence in their own judgment, making them doubt themselves. The narcissist might accuse the target of being overly sensitive or imagining things, which makes them question their own perceptions. Over time, the target becomes increasingly dependent on the narcissist for validation and guidance, unsure of their own reality and unable to trust their instincts. This is the core goal of gaslighting: to make the victim feel helpless, uncertain, and reliant on the narcissist for direction. One of the main reasons gaslighting is so effective is that it taps into the victim's fear of being wrong or judged by others. The narcissist exploits this fear by manipulating situations and conversations in such a way that the target feels they are the one at fault, even when they are not. The narcissist might use their charm or intellectual superiority to manipulate the situation in their favor, leaving the target feeling overwhelmed and defeated. The narcissist is skilled at making the victim feel as though they are always on the wrong side of an argument, even when the facts are clear. Over time, the victim becomes unsure of their own worth, feeling as if their thoughts and feelings are always invalidated or dismissed. Isolation is another powerful tactic that a narcissist uses when confronted with someone they feel is too strong. A narcissist knows that strength often comes from support, whether from friends, family, or a broader social network. If the narcissist can isolate their target from these support systems, they remove any outside influence that might challenge their control. Isolation is often a gradual process. The narcissist may begin by sowing seeds of doubt about other people in the target's life. They might claim that certain friends or family members do not truly care about them, or that their intentions are not as genuine as they appear. They might subtly manipulate the target into thinking that others are conspiring against them or speaking ill of them behind their back. The narcissist may even go so far as to create scenarios where the victim's relationships are tested or strained, leading to rifts in friendships or family dynamics. The goal of this isolation is to create a dependency on the narcissist, making the target feel as though they have no one else to turn to for support or validation. In an isolated state, the narcissist becomes the only source of feedback, approval, and emotional connection. This creates a power imbalance where the victim is entirely reliant on the narcissist for emotional needs and guidance. The narcissist can then manipulate this dependency to their advantage, keeping the target in a weakened state and ensuring that they remain under their control. In more extreme cases, a narcissist may also use isolation to create a sense of paranoia in the victim. They might suggest that others are plotting against them, making the target feel as if they are alone in a hostile world. This tactic, known as emotional abuse, works by keeping the victim in a constant state of fear and uncertainty. The narcissist knows that a person who is afraid and isolated is less likely to resist manipulation or assert their own needs and desires. By keeping the victim in a state of emotional vulnerability, the narcissist can maintain dominance and control. Both gaslighting and isolation serve the narcissist's ultimate goal, to maintain power and control over their target. When they perceive someone as too strong, they know that breaking down the target's sense of self and support system is crucial to weakening their resolve. The narcissist does not want someone to be independent or self-sufficient because it challenges their ability to manipulate and control. Instead, they want to create a situation where the target is emotionally dependent on them, unsure of their own reality, and isolated from sources of support. By undermining the target's confidence and support systems, the narcissist can maintain a position of authority and superiority, making it easier to manipulate, exploit, and dominate the individual. These tactics are not always immediately apparent to those who are caught in them. The subtlety and gradual nature of gaslighting and isolation make it difficult for the victim to recognize what is happening until they are already deep into the manipulation. However, once the victim begins to understand the patterns of narcissistic behavior, they can start to recognize these tactics for what they are: tools of control, designed to weaken, confuse, and isolate. The challenge, however, is in breaking free from this manipulation and regaining a sense of autonomy and self-worth. Undermining confidence and self-worth is one of the primary tactics employed by narcissists when they perceive someone as a threat. At the core of their behavior is a profound insecurity, one that demands constant validation and adoration from those around them. When faced with someone who displays strength, resilience, or self-assurance, the narcissist's first instinct is to weaken that individual, to destabilize their sense of self. This is not just about asserting dominance. It is about reducing the target's confidence to a level where they are no longer a perceived threat. The narcissist understands that confidence is power, and if they can erode that confidence, they gain control over the individual's actions, thoughts, and decisions. The narcissist's method of undermining confidence is often insidious, beginning with subtle remarks or criticisms that might seem harmless or even constructive to an outside observer. These comments, however, are designed to plant seeds of doubt in the target's mind. They might point out small imperfections or flaws, not necessarily to correct them, but to highlight them in a way that makes the person feel inadequate. Over time, these criticisms build up, chipping away at the individual's self-esteem. The narcissist uses these small attacks to create a narrative of inadequacy, reinforcing the idea that the target is not as capable, smart, or worthy as they may have thought. The narcissist's strategy is to make the person question their own abilities, their value, and even their identity. This is done through a combination of gaslighting, manipulation, and distortion. The narcissist may twist the target's words, actions, or intentions, making them believe that they have said or done something wrong when they have not. The goal is to create confusion and self-doubt so the individual begins to second-guess their judgment and capabilities. In some cases, the narcissist might even manipulate the environment or the people around the target to isolate them or make them feel unsupported. The narcissist wants the person to feel as if they are alone in their struggles, making them more vulnerable to manipulation. The more confident and self-assured the target is, the more the narcissist feels threatened. Confidence is a mirror that reflects back the narcissist's own lack of self-worth. The narcissist needs to be the center of attention, and when someone else commands that same presence, they can no longer rely on the usual methods of gaining admiration. Instead, they must undermine the other person's confidence to ensure that their own inflated sense of self is maintained. They do this not only by questioning the target's abilities, but by using their own inflated self-image as a comparison, subtly implying that the target is inferior in every way. This tactic also extends to the narcissist's ability to manipulate the emotions of others. When the narcissist sees someone who is strong or confident, they will often attempt to provoke insecurity by exploiting emotional vulnerabilities. They might use past experiences or personal struggles as ammunition, bringing up past failures or mistakes to weaken the individual's resolve. They do this not out of concern, but as a strategy to keep the target off balance. By continually reminding the individual of their past missteps, the narcissist hopes to keep them in a state of self-criticism, forever questioning their value. Another method of undermining confidence is through the creation of false narratives. The narcissist will often engage in projection, accusing the target of the very things they are guilty of. If the narcissist feels threatened by the target's strength, they may accuse the individual of being arrogant, conceited, or overly self-assured. They might criticize them for being overly critical or dismissive, projecting their own behavior onto the target to shift the focus away from their own insecurities. This projection serves a dual purpose. It deflects attention from the narcissist's flaws and reinforces the idea that the target is the one with the problem, not the narcissist. This constant erosion of self-worth can take a significant toll on the individual. Over time, the person may begin to internalize the narcissist's criticisms, believing that they are truly not worthy, capable, or deserving of success. This internalized doubt can lead to anxiety, depression, and a loss of motivation. It can even cause the individual to question their own relationships, as the narcissist may manipulate the dynamics of the group, sowing discord and distrust. The target becomes so consumed with self-doubt that they begin to second-guess their decisions and withdraw from situations where they once thrived. The narcissist's goal is to wear down the individual's sense of self so that they are left vulnerable and dependent on the narcissist for validation. By undermining the target's confidence, the narcissist not only secures their own position, but also gains control over the individual's emotional state. The person who was once confident and strong becomes uncertain, hesitant, and unsure of themselves, making them easier to manipulate and dominate. The narcissist thrives on this power dynamic, using it to fuel their need for control and admiration. The more they can destabilize the other person's self-worth, the more they maintain their own position of power. Ladies and gentlemen, the world we live in is full of complexity. It's full of people, and those people are constantly interacting with one another, each driven by their own desires, fears, and motives. Now, in this vast, chaotic dance of human relationships, there's a certain personality type that emerges with a very specific set of characteristics: a narcissist. The narcissist's fear of strong individuals is a complex and often overlooked aspect of their behavior. At its core, a narcissist is deeply insecure despite the outward appearance of confidence and self-assuredness. This insecurity arises from an unstable sense of self that relies heavily on external validation. When someone else displays strength, whether it's emotional, intellectual, or physical, the narcissist perceives it as a threat. This is because, in the narcissist's world, there is little room for anyone else to occupy a position of power or influence. Their need to dominate and be the center of attention leaves no space for others to exist on equal or higher footing. When confronted with someone stronger, the narcissist's sense of superiority is destabilized. It's as though their very identity is being challenged, not by what you do or say directly, but by your mere existence and the strength you display. They can no longer feel certain in their self-assessment because someone else is displaying the kind of qualities they want for themselves, qualities they feel entitled to but struggle to develop. This insecurity manifests itself in various ways, often beginning with envy. Envy isn't just about wishing they had what you have. It's about resenting you for having it in the first place. Your strength, your accomplishments, your ability to stand firm in your beliefs. These things make the narcissist feel small, insignificant, and inadequate. A narcissist's insecurity leads them to view anyone who is strong as a direct threat to their position. In their eyes, if you are strong, then you might be able to rise above them or even surpass them. This possibility of being overshadowed, even in the slightest way, is intolerable to a narcissist. They cannot stand the idea of being outdone, or worse, being irrelevant in comparison to someone else's strength. This fear often triggers an immediate reaction. The narcissist, unable to cope with the threat to their superiority, begins to take action, though not in ways that might seem rational or healthy. This dynamic is particularly evident when you possess qualities the narcissist admires but feels they cannot achieve themselves. Perhaps it's emotional intelligence, resilience in the face of adversity, or a level of personal discipline. If you are capable of navigating the complexities of life with a sense of stability, it poses a direct challenge to their grandiose self-image. A narcissist's identity is fragile, constantly needing to be inflated to maintain its facade of grandeur. Your strength punctures that illusion, making them feel as if their entire worldview is being exposed as false. The deeper their insecurity, the stronger their reaction will be to your strength. In extreme cases, the narcissist's fear of strong individuals can trigger aggressive behavior. This is not necessarily physical aggression, but can manifest in verbal attacks, passive-aggressive behavior, or even a calculated attempt to isolate or undermine you. The narcissist knows that if they cannot match your strength, they may be able to undermine it through psychological manipulation. They might use tactics like gaslighting, turning others against you, or attempting to control your narrative. The goal is to neutralize the threat that your strength poses by making you question your own worth, actions, or abilities. This fear can also lead to the narcissist trying to discredit you publicly. They may attempt to diminish your accomplishments or twist your achievements to make them seem insignificant. If you are in a professional setting, for example, they might belittle your contributions, taking credit for your successes, or subtly sabotaging your efforts to maintain their own sense of importance. In social circles, they might spread rumors or create a narrative that frames you as arrogant or self-absorbed, attempting to cast you in a negative light. Anything that might detract from the admiration or respect you receive is seen as a victory for the narcissist. The narcissist's fear is not just about power. It's about control. They fear losing control over their environment, their relationships, and ultimately their own self-perception. A strong individual represents a force that cannot easily be controlled or manipulated. This is something that the narcissist cannot tolerate. For them, the world is about creating an image of perfection. And anyone who challenges that image becomes a threat to their carefully constructed facade. In their minds, the existence of someone stronger than them is an uncomfortable reminder that they are not invincible. The idea that someone could rise above their manipulations or remain unaffected by their emotional games forces them to confront the reality of their own limitations. This is the paradox of the narcissist. While they crave admiration and seek to control others, they are terrified of anyone who can disrupt their fragile sense of superiority.